Today, I have a discussion that I really want to do a deep dive into. So, I am reading this book right now called Lonely Girl by Anna Vichon, and it is a memoir about Anna, who at 24 years old picked up everything and moved across the country. I'm about a fourth of the way done with this, and one major thing that I've noticed in this book is this woman is so male centered. Like, for example, she met her landlord who was 20 years older than her, and she immediately was like, I could get married to him, be a carpenter's wife, and fall in love. And then she met her bartender, and she was like, why is this bartender not paying me any attention? And then she's hung up on her cheating, lying ex. And I feel like that kind of represents women as a society right now, especially myself. So I also did some reflection. I grabbed my journal from 6 months ago that's literally it's falling apart, y'all. I got a new one, but I was just reading my old journal entries today, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 consecutive pages that are different journal entries just about myself and about how much I want to be in love and how much I want to feel cared for and how I don't feel valid with just myself, that I feel the need to be in a romantic relationship. And I think that I am not alone in this. We hear it in podcasts, Emma Chamberlain's podcast, Brittany Broski's podcast. You hear it everywhere in women's podcasts and women's music, such as The Art of Loving by Olivia Dean and Control by SZA, that are both major top chart albums that I feel a lot of people relate to. And essentially those albums are primarily talking about love and women trying to get someone to love them. So I want to dive into this both personally and historically, and also as a present society, which I'm going to dive into historically and current society first before I dive into my personal experiences. So honestly, let's just start off with that. Let's start off with the history. I have my computer here that I'm looking up a few sources on. So I have 3 different books that I have read many excerpts from, and that is Marriage: A History by Stephanie Coontz, Why We Love by Helen Fisher, and The Reproduction of Mothering by Nancy Chodorow. Let's dive into Marriage: A History first. This book discusses how we depend on men and marriage because, not necessarily because of love, but because for thousands and thousands of years, women couldn't get jobs. So we had to depend on our husbands. You think back to the cavemen, the men were the ones going out and hunting while women stayed home with the kids. And this continued in society up until late 1900s, where women were staying at home with children and we were depending on men financially and emotionally. Now, obviously, financially, that's not really a thing anymore. However, it is evolutionarily bred into our minds to crave those relationships because we still depend on men on some levels, definitely emotionally and also just psychologically. We are stuck in a cycle of not knowing how to be by ourselves and feeling oh, maybe I could be fulfilled if I found a man. Now, Why We Love by Helen Fisher is essentially the biology aspect of it. So we have the psychology aspect of it and then the biology aspect of it. And this essentially says that all those good, happy feelings kind of come up when you are first talking to someone new or falling in love. That oxytocin, the dopamine, you are going to feel very happy and almost attached to that person. And then that person will pull away. And this just causes a dependency cycle almost. Now we are going to go back to that book multiple times in the present day aspect of everything, but that's basically a brief summary of that one. And the last one is The Reproduction of Mothering by Nancy Chodorow. This essentially talks about how women are socialized to value emotional intimacy and relationships more strongly than men are, primarily because of how we are biologically mothers. Like, you can't argue with that. We are mothers. We are the ones who have wombs and have been mothers since the start of the earth. Like, if you're Christian, since Adam and Eve. But we are mothers, and so we crave these men to reproduce with us, and then we want them to stay because that's all we've ever known as a society, is to have a man support us with children, and it is bred into us to want children naturally. Now, I promise you, this is not me being like a misogynist. Obviously, I just told you that I wrote 5 pages, or I don't even remember how many it was, 5 or 6 pages on how I crave love so deeply. I am strictly trying to do an unbiased analysis on the history of all this. So that's a little disclaimer. I have also done a deep dive on men, and for men, they have been the ones who have been depended on. Men have always been told to be strong, be macho, don't be vulnerable. And so this has been ingrained into them. Do not be vulnerable. Do not give up your emotions. Do not tell other people your emotions. And this kind of leads to the situationship aspect of everything, and how men, they get so happy in the original stages of a relationship. They are like, you're my everything. I'm going to buy you flowers. I'm going to buy you gifts. Like, I'm going to take you on these nice ass dates. And then one day they just decide to up and leave. And this is because they've always been taught, don't let anyone too close, because you have to be strong and you cannot be vulnerable. So the second they start feeling like, oh, this is someone I really care about and I'm getting vulnerable with them, a switch flips in their brain and they're like, I cannot be vulnerable. Like, I have to be strong, so I have to run away from this. And that's why ghosting is a big thing. Now, obviously, I'm generalizing a lot. Like, not every single man in today's world is up and leaving every single girl they meet. However, it is much harder to find and much harder to almost get them to stick around. Now, why they are always very sexual and very just like hookup centered is also engraved into them, because you think about all these suppressed emotions that they get it out through sex. And you think back to kings, they used to have like 600 mistresses. Like, this has always been a thing. However, I feel like now that we have moved as a society towards marriage, and in the last like 100 years or so, I feel like long-term relationships have gotten more value. So women now expect that, whereas men are still kind of bred into only caring about surface level things and sex. And if you think about it, like, this has always been a thing. And for them, exclusivity also feels like a loss of freedom. So like, being exclusive feels like they are giving up something, like giving up their freedom. Their emotional needs are also found elsewhere through sex, friendship, and work. Men are not bred to be emotionally dependent on a relationship like us women are. So that's kind of the history of it. And now let's talk about today, because from my perspective, obviously, divorce rates have gone up. I wonder what the current divorce rates are. Okay, so in America, 50% of marriages do not work out. Now let's look up divorce rates in 1980. In the 1970s and 80s, divorce rates were below 2%. And now they are at 50%. That is an all-time high. And obviously, if we are looking at historically, then why has it gone down and then gone back up? Because if we're looking at historically, men, like I said, macho. Women, like I said, dependent. Men run, women rely. So why have divorce rates gone up so much? Now, obviously, I'm sure there were women who were being abused and who had to leave these situations. However, I'm trying to look at the majority, and I feel like majority of divorces now do not come from horrible situations. Obviously, some do, but not all of them do. And as a society, we have fallen into McDonaldization, which is essentially a sociological perspective or idea where everything in our society comes so fast now. You think about McDonald's drive-thrus, that's actually where this McDonaldization comes from. But you think about McDonald's drive-thrus, everything happens so quick. You say your order, you pay for your order, you get your food, you eat. Whereas a sit-down restaurant might take 20 minutes to get your food out. Now, if you're sitting at a sit-down restaurant and it's an hour and a half after you've ordered, you're going to be like, hey, where is my food? Back in the day, they would have been like, oh, they're making it, like we're going to wait. However, our society has become something where we are constantly getting that instant dopamine from scrolling, from the food we eat, from nicotine, from alcohol, like everything, we constantly get instant dopamine and instant happiness. So when you start out a relationship or a situationship, I kind of hate that word, but when you start out one of these things, your body is being overflowed with oxytocin and dopamine. You are so excited. You are on the top of the world, okay? You are getting all of this dopamine, even more than from a McDonald's drive-thru. Now, as a relationship goes on, your body gets used to that person, and those chemicals are not as crazy or fluctuating anymore and kind of settle into the relationship. And since we are so dependent on instant dopamine and constant happiness, and we crave that as a society, then when we don't get that anymore from a person, we leave, especially men. The men are going to leave. So that's why there are so many surface level situationships right now that you can't even create a long-term relationship on, because it is just like an instant happiness, and then when that's gone, so is the other person. And then you're super sad, and then you look for someone else. And then that other person gives you that instant happiness, and then you get bored and you leave. And that's also why divorce rates have gone up, because so have infidelity rates. So people get married and think, oh, I really like this person. I want to make them my partner for my whole life. They get bored. They go cheat. The person finds out, hey, why did you cheat? I'm divorcing you. We have just become a society where we cannot, a huge part of love is accepting someone for all their flaws and for the dull moments. Loving them through almost everything is a main part of the foundation of a long-term relationship. So if you can't love and accept someone for everything, then the relationship's not going to work out. And I feel like we are always looking for that dopamine. So, oh, this person's flawed. Well, I'm going to go out and find someone who's not as flawed and get with them. And that's why relationships aren't even really a thing anymore. Now, there is also something that let's dive into. This is called the lonely man apocalypse. And this is essentially a theory. I don't even know where I initially saw it, but I was like, wow, that kind of makes sense. But the lonely man apocalypse is women started getting jobs. So in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, women started getting jobs. We were able to work and make a living for ourselves. So slowly we started to realize, hey, we don't actually have to depend on men. Maybe if we want a child, it's a lot easier to raise one with somebody else, but we don't actually have to depend on men. And these men kind of treat us like crap, so let's be by ourselves. So women started staying single a lot more. Now this caused men to kind of just accept that fact and no longer chase after the relationships. So men, it's harder for them to get into relationships now because women are more closed off. We are like, hey, y'all kind of suck, so we can support ourselves, so we are gonna do that. And I probably need to research more on this, but I just want to kind of touch on it lightly and kind of discuss it because it is something that's happening in our society today where, so women don't need men. Men adjust to that and get scared. Men don't like feeling scared. Men don't like feeling bad or sad. So they start running from relationships because they assume that this is a generalized thing. Well, now women want a relationship because we're lonely, we want a partner, we still crave being loved. Every single human on planet Earth craves being loved. But the men have run away because they're afraid, oh, this girl's gonna talk to me for a little bit and then get scared and leave. And vice versa. Women think that about men too. So it is just a cycle. Sorry, y'all. I ran out of storage, so it cut me off, but I fixed the problem, so that shouldn't happen again, at least in this video. But you kind of get the point of what I was saying. Like, as a society, we have just gotten to a point where relationships seem unattainable, and I feel like it's very hard to find someone to commit, especially at our age. Now I want to jump into my personal history and experience with relationships. I have had 3 serious relationships. One of them lasted a year, one of them lasted 6 months, and one of them lasted 3 months. Now let's jump into anxious attachment and where this started for me and kind of how I have learned to cope with it and deal with it. So starting out at age 0, I popped out of the womb. I had colic, which if you know what that is, then good. But if you don't, it's essentially a baby's stomach just really hurts. They can't process their mom's milk right, and so it gets stuck in their stomach, and so they cry all the time. Now, my mom got annoyed with my crying. My mom's not the most patient person, and she decided to do the cry it out method. So from a month old, I immediately learned I'm all I have. I would cry all the time, literally cry myself to sleep every single night as an infant, and this is very bad for a baby's brain because as a baby, your parents are all you have to rely on and to keep you alive. And so if you are being actively abandoned, then that can really mess up your brain even at those young ages. When I was young, I was also an only child, and my mom never really had much interest in like playing with me, which I'm not blaming her for anything, but I'm just telling my backstory. So I was always kind of by myself, having to play by myself, and I kind of learned from a young age, okay, in order to impress my mom, I have to do something really cool. Like nothing I do will ever be good enough for her. So I need to be over the top, and I need to show her so much love so that she cares. When I was 7 years old, my parents got a divorce, and this didn't really impact me until I was older because I was 7 and didn't really know anything about my emotions or how to deal with them. That further kind of taught me that if I want someone to stay, I need to grasp onto it because every relationship is going to be fleeting. No one's ever going to stay. And then my mom got into a relationship, which my mom had custody of me, so I was with her almost all the time. She got into a 3-year-long relationship with a man named Matt, and I was very close with him. She got into this relationship when I was ages 8 to 11, which I feel like are definitely like formative years. Like that was kind of pre-puberty. That was when I was like learning my own self and emotions. And I kind of thought of him as new dad because he would discipline me, yet he would still love me like a father. So I thought of him as new dad. My mom broke up with him when I was 11. And this took a major toll on me. I cried, I think, for a month. And then 6 months after they broke up, I saw Trent in public, ran up to him, started sobbing in his arms. Literally, his new girlfriend was standing right next to him, and I was just sobbing in his arms. So this obviously further kind of engraved in my brain that if I want someone to stay, I have to go over the top to make that happen. My mom also got married to another guy, and I don't even think that impacted me that much because I was never really like, oh, new dad. I was kind of in the habit of this isn't gonna last, and it didn't last, so glad I thought that at least. It's kind of sad that a 14-year-old was like, my mom's relationship isn't gonna last, so I can't even be close with this man. But that clearly kind of goes to show what I was dealing with. Now, when I got onto the dating scene, I met my first boyfriend. I am still friends with that man, and I am so grateful for him. Like, I tell him that every day. Like, he was there for me when I was 14 years old, so I was very young, and we ended up dating from like 14 and a half to like 15 and a half. My first boyfriend was just like me. He's definitely someone with anxious attachment. I remember I would go 2 hours without texting him, and he would be like, where are you? What are you doing? And I was like, I'm just not on my phone for 2 hours, God forbid. Anyways, so I ended up breaking up with him because I thought that I could find better. We can look back at the McDonaldization of this all and the instant dopamine and me getting bored. I'm no better than what I'm talking about, but I kind of got bored and was like, I could find somebody better. So then I went and met my second boyfriend. Him, I dated for 6 months, like I said before. And this is really when my anxious attachment flared up. I don't know if he was necessarily avoidant or what, but I was so dependent on him. Like, anxious attachment turned limerence turned codependency. I could not go 30 minutes without talking to him. If he didn't talk to me for an hour, I was like, where are you? What are you doing? Like, I'm so sad, boo-hoo. He ended up going on this cruise around like the 6-month mark, and I cried in his arms for literally 3 hours before he left for the cruise because he wouldn't have Wi-Fi for a week. I was gonna spend $100 to get him a damn Wi-Fi box. Like, I'm not even kidding. I was tweaking. He was like, please don't do that. Like, if you get that, I'm not using it. I was like, so anyways, he went on this cruise and ended up losing his phone in Mexico. I was distraught. I was so codependent that every single day of his trip, I was writing him letters, which you could be like, oh, sweet. But the letters were like, I miss you so much. And then I would text him literally every 5 minutes. I remember one day he liked one of the texts because he got like Wi-Fi for a second. I started bawling. I was like, oh my God, he misses me. He's back. Whatever. He loses his phone on this cruise in Mexico. I see him after he comes back. We do like a Christmas gift exchange. He ends up breaking up with me. And also before that happened, I found out that he cheated on me on the cruise. So I was really sad, but I was like, oh, I'm so in love. I'm going to stay with you because I was codependent. He broke up with me. He was like, I think this is for the best. I can't deal with you being codependent because I am 16 years old and have a girl relying on me for her every single feeling. Valid. I look back now and I'm like, damn, I honestly might have cheated on me too. Like, I would have hated me. So I don't blame him. My third relationship, this guy I dated for 3 months, and in the span of 3 months, he cheated on me 6 times. We broke up over a year ago now, and I think that I have seen him 5 times since we broke up, some of them while he has a girlfriend. So, like I said, everyone's flawed. I am no better than the people and situations that I am discussing in this video. Obviously, I shouldn't have let him hang out with me while he had a girlfriend, but I so deeply craved love, and I was like, this is someone who once claimed to love me, so I'm gonna attach to him and keep letting him back. Definitely a regret of mine, but what can you do now? My ex and I broke up in October of 2024. I met this guy back in October of 2025, so a year after I broke up with my most recent ex, and he was, I thought, gonna be my husband. Like, he was so sweet, and I really, really, really liked him. He was handsome, he was funny, and he got very vulnerable with me. He ended up reading me his journals, which, if by any chance you're watching this, sorry for outing you, but I'm not saying any names, so you're fine. He ended up reading me his journals and whatever, got very vulnerable. Kind of hard for him to get vulnerable, and once he did, he kind of ran away. And then a conflict arose, and when that conflict arose, he completely ghosted me, which I don't know. I've never been him in the situation of what happened, so I can't say if I blame him or not. But now I see him at school and he's flirting with other girls. That makes me kind of sad to see because I'm like, I thought that I was in love with you at one point, and I know that we only talked for a month and a half, but I really, really, really liked this man. That he is what I wrote the 6 pages about love about. I really, really liked him, and honestly, I'm so grateful for him and so grateful for every one of my experiences with every man because they've all taught me a different lesson. And with him, he taught me to look in and be like, hey, why do I get so attached to men? And then be like, hey, why are men like this in today's society? But that's kind of my attachment struggles. Now I will only date a man if he could be a dad to my kid, because I do not want my kid to go through what I have gone through, both with my dad and with my mom. My mom having so many partners, I don't want my kid to experience life the way that I have. And I feel like we can either become our parents or learn lessons from our parents. And I think that I learned lessons from mine to where I won't date and especially not marry a man who I could not spend forever with. Like, my main priority is how are you going to handle a conflict? Are you going to love me through it? How are you going to handle my flaws? Because I'll love you through it, but are you willing to love me through it in a society where everything is immediate dopamine? In a society where you could have just surface level hookups, but you're still choosing to be in a relationship? I think that my priorities have definitely changed since I was like 15, but I am very grateful for that and grateful for my experiences in dating and how many lessons it has taught me. So that's basically my spiel. I'm sorry if this was a really boring video for some of you. I just feel like I needed to get all this off my chest, and obviously I wrote it in a journal, but there's nothing like a good yap sesh. So I hope that y'all have an amazing day. If you made it this far, I don't know how, but thank you so much. Props to you. Literally love you. Okay, bye.